gonna go fast. I promise.
All right.
Once you get to talking your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. Watch.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your hood. I am absolutely Adia.
And I am the franchise.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yes.
Ashley's not here,
Ashley.
but this is the quad. We have the lovely Miss Regina James in the studio with us today.
Regina James.
Hello.
How are you?
How's it going?
It's going well.
Good.
Yeah.
Regina,
Happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
All right.
there's a lot of melanin in here.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of it.
Feeling godly. Regina is committed to connecting and empowering others to pursue purpose-driven work.
Oh.
She believes that everyone should strive to design a career that will inspire and challenge, understanding that the career journey is an ever-changing process. She has over 15 years career services experience working with clients, managing a series of career decisions and transitions. She is a certified resume writer. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So she can help me with my well-written resume.
Now you're just showing off.
Practicing in the mirror.
I got it now, baby.
and it's so dope and so fitting because, you know, it's the end of the year. Mm-hmm. We start looking at New Year's resolutions and getting in line with what we want our goals to be and aims. And for a lot of people, it's a new job or a new career.
True.
You know, a lot of people have kind of ventured off from their dreams. We talked about that the last episode, you know, kind of that mid-30s thing. And when I thought about, you know, how we could start to move forward into 2019, I just felt like she was such a perfect fit for the show to kind of talk about getting past that hump and kind of helping you figure out where you're trying to go with your career. And once you figure that out, kind of giving some tools and tips on how to land that job.
Oh, man, I look forward to this. I think I'm going to be over here taking notes. I'm like, hold on, is this for me? Did you do this just for me?
It's for you. It's for me, too.
Thank you.
You know, I've been trying to get away from my plantation for the past couple of months.
I'm going to need you to stop saying that.
12 years a slave, it feels like. So, I definitely use her services. And it was funny because I think everybody has that moment where in our minds and, you know, to us, it feels like we've done a lot. But when it's time to put it on paper, it's hard to quantify it, especially if it's not a specific position. You know, for me as an entrepreneur, I worked almost 10 years for myself. Right. So when I transitioned over into corporate America, it was hard for me to put on paper the things that I did and make it make sense. Right. So she helped me with that in such an amazing way. Just learning the difference between resumes. I didn't know I needed more than one resume, you know? Right. So stuff like
for
that.
Different jobs, different skills.
Right.
Interesting. Well, Regina, kind of get into that a little bit. Just the art of writing a resume.
Sure. You know, it starts with having an understanding of what it is you want to do. So many individuals who've come to me in the past, especially when I worked in a university setting with college students, you go, well, what are you here for today? And they'll say, I'm here because I need help with my resume. What is the resume for? A job. Okay, that's usually what resumes are for. So then when you start to dig, sometimes you can't even really articulate what you wanting to use the document for. And so you have to start with the intention, the purpose of it. Because if you don't have a resume that is customized to a specific opportunity or job, then it's going to get looked over. Right. And especially if you're applying for positions at larger corporations where they're using all of these scanning technology systems where they're looking for keywords and things. And if you have this very generic document that isn't really speaking to one type of functional area of work, then the reader is not going to understand it.
Right. I know for Liberty Mutual, they all go through that scanner thing. So if you don't have the specific keywords, you won't even get to like a callback.
Really?
Right.
Yeah, a lot of places are exactly what she said.
So I would say starting there, and sometimes it takes a lot more reflection, personal self-assessment to kind of navigate that. Because let's say if you feel stuck and you know you want to do something different, you know you have certain skill sets to offer, you just don't know how that's going to translate.
Right.
That's talking to somebody, talking to a professional career coach like myself to help you kind of navigate that. Then once that is established, then you can determine the best resume type or types to begin to craft, right?
Yeah.
So many of us think that a resume is kind of what we like to call in the resume writing world traditional reverse chronological order. So basically you list all of your work experience, where the most recent experience is listed on top, the least recent experience on the bottom of the resume, and then everything else is in between. Well, the problem with that sometimes is that not all of your experience is directly related to what it is you want to do. All of your experience can be crafted to be relevant, but to be directly related to a particular job or function or industry, you have to really look at the scope of your experience. And sometimes that means breaking your experience up in what I like to call a hybrid resume.
So, okay, so sounds like what you do is very intricate. But it also sounds like if you were to help me, we obviously have to go through some type of Q&A interview type of process so you can get that information to be able to help me. So is that something that's expected in your process?
Oh, absolutely. You have to. You have to do a little bit of digging, see what you have. A lot of times you have information that the resume writer can build off of. And I usually start there. I don't care how rough it is. I want you to be kind of a contributing member of the process, right? And some folks are not big content writers, and that's okay, because I can write content, and there are other resume writers that can write content. And then there's some that have very strong content, but it's about organizing it in a really simplistic way so that the reader can, get what they need off the page within anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds.
Wow.
I think the biggest thing for me was thinking that someone could look at a title or a position and pull out whatever was missing in my mind. Like if I did car sales, when I did car sales, I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, if they see that, they know that I could deal with difficult customers. I could, problem solving, face-to-face interaction, stuff like that. The biggest takeaway that I got from working with Regina was understanding the aesthetics of my resume.
Oh yeah.
Because just like she said,
big words now. Aesthetics. What do you mean? What's that mean? Not everybody might know that. Ti. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay, it's your turn.
I'm just saying.
It's your turn.
I'm just making sure.
Just the look of it.
Look of it.
And from a marketing perspective, like for my sales and marketing resume, I had a very, the old school, just like she said, the chronological order with my name and address at the top.
Yeah.
And then the one that she did was really dope, where it had like skill set on the side. The design was very modern. It was crisp. It was clean, and it had some graphic design to it.
Ooh,
so,
fancy.
that's something that you should expect from somebody in that field that has the capability. I definitely have the capability to do it. I just didn't know that that was something that someone would look for in that resume, So that's where it comes into play. It's not even so much. I think a lot of times people automatically assume like if you have to work with a resume writer that you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
And I don't think that it's that at all. I think it's being in touch with someone that is directly at the pulse of the industry and that can give you timely feedback that's relevant to right now.
Exactly.
Because the last time I worked with somebody on my resume was in college,
Right.
you know, so everything that I've done,
And that's a
you know,
really,
updates.
that's a really great point, because I work with a lot of recruiters, and, you know, each year we do kind of this pulse check with some of the recruiters in the area and say, okay, well, what's the best practice and what are you looking for and things. And there's a lot of resumes out there that still have that references available upon request at the bottom that'll have their supervisor's name and phone number on the resume. You need to save that space for content, right? For your skills and experiences. The references is a separate document. And a lot of times we just don't know those things, right? And so some of those conversations come up when, you know, you have resumes and maybe you haven't updated your resume in several years.
Right.
Yeah,
that's what my mom is going through. You know, she retired early and sat out for a while, and now she's interested in, you know, looking for something, you know, maybe part-time or whatever. But she has that same situation where she worked somewhere for 30 years. Right. You know, so, you know, she was like, this is it. Oh, I got to update this? Yes.
Yeah. Well, so when it comes to you working with the recruiters, and does the type of resume, does it differ by industry or?
Industry, job function, job type. I mean, it varies from person to person. I'll give you a perfect example. Was doing a little bit of pro bono work for this local program that is headed up by Judge Amber Gibbons, and it's called the Empowerment Program.
Oh,
and so I was doing some resume work with some of the participants of that program, and there were 3 different guys that had worked in a warehouse, okay? And kind of the foundation of their experience, kind of the fundamentals are the same or were very similar, but when you get into the scope of work a little bit more, you had one that got a little bit into more of the safety side of warehouse work. You had one that did more logistics. You had one that actually became certified to operate a forklift, and that changed the scope of his work. Right. And so very similar resumes, but yet very different resumes. And so when I'm working with them, I try to take an individualistic approach into crafting those 3 resumes. So those 3 resumes are going to look very different. Right. And also, you have one person that maybe is a little more senior in his experience versus the other. And so that's going to look, so that person can have a stronger summary statement versus the other one is just a little fresh, hot off the press, just getting into warehouse work. So that resume is going to be, you know, more kind of skilled based, right? So
nice.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's really a lot to it. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking like, yeah, I mean, I haven't had to really update my resume a whole lot, or maybe I should have updated it, but I didn't. That's what I'm feeling like.
And that's like, you know what? If anything, pass the word on. When you start a new job, let's say, I'm going to say the first month in, before the first month ends on your new gig,
update your resume.
Put that job on your resume.
Yes. Now that I've been doing.
Put that job
I have
on
been doing. Yes, I feel
I
good
have
about
a
myself.
big question about the money. So when you look at, you know, I know a lot of times when you're applying for positions, they all ask you up front, like your current pay, current salary, and salary request. So is that something that should be included in your resume or even included in that first conversation?
I would say exclude from putting that information on your resume. You want to have the employer bring that conversation up, not you yourself, because you don't want to insinuate that you're money driven, even if that is a value of yours to make a certain income within a company. And you don't want to waste your time and you don't want to waste theirs as well. But usually it will come up and usually earlier on in the conversation. So allow them to bring it up, sometimes to bring it up on the application. And that gives you the opportunity to, what I would like to recommend for individuals to do, to put a range. So it
Right.
doesn't limit you to a certain thing. And so you could see how competitive you are throughout the process. And if you get the vibe that they really want you, then you might be able to negotiate a little bit more. So that's why I say a range works instead of one hard number. And also with salary, there's so many other things, or with negotiations, there's so many other things that you can negotiate. I've worked with clients that negotiate extra time, bonuses.
Like vacation time.
Yeah, vacation time. Time is money.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Yes, it is.
Especially when you retire, they gotta pay you.
So those
That's
are things
good.
that you don't really want to designate or speak to on the resume, because you can't really explain that.
And
in
that
as
was
much
going to be
detail.
my next question about negotiating. So is it okay to give an alternative if they present you with a figure that you feel like isn't high enough?
Oh, absolutely. It's always
Right. That's
the
all
worst
we
they
hear.
can say is no. I always
Right.
tell my clients the worst that they can say is no. Now you have to do your own due diligence, right? So, going to Glassdoor and salary.com and, doing some industry research. Also, the Dallas market is different from the market in Atlanta or Chicago
Definitely
or New
different
York.
from New Orleans. That's why I moved.
And so,
Definitely.
so understanding what that dollar amount looks like and whether or not that is fair and realistic for your skill set and experience. And we tell you, corporations going to lowball you regardless.
every time.
They're going to try to give you the bare, because they're trying to save money.
Right.
So it's your job to speak to your value and your worth and know what that dollar amount is.
And that's why it's so important to make sure you can put it in on paper.
Oh, absolutely.
So that your resume reflects what you're asking for.
No question. I mean, I didn't realize how valuable of service that was until you really started talking.
Yeah.
And I know that for myself, as we were speaking about earlier, sometimes when you sit back and look at your career, especially if you've been at a job for some time, you look back, because this happened to me, look back at your career and you try to document everything that you've been involved in.
Right.
And, I went through an interview process and I didn't realize how much of that information that really just lost my mind. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or I just lost. So if
It
you don't
does.
document, if you don't write it down that this is what you did, this is what you
You
helped
lose
start,
it.
this is the committee you were sitting on, and you try to do it all the day before the interview,
Nope.
it's going to be a problem.
It's going to be
So
a
that's something
problem,
that
and
you
you're
help
going to
people with.
forget your talking points. The resume doesn't get you the job, right? But it can grab the attention of the recruiter, right, to get you to that next step. But it doesn't necessarily get you the job. But there's so many things you can use that document for. You use that as your guide to talk through your work and your accomplishments, right? Everything kind of builds off of itself. So if you have a resume with really strong content, you should be able to leverage that to write an exceptional cover letter. You should be able to leverage that to be able to prepare for the interview and really speak to some of those talking points and even elaborate on some of those experiences, especially when you're talking about behavioral interviewing, because a lot of your bullet points on your resume is really tangible, task-oriented points that you're trying to make, but maybe you want to speak to your collaborative nature based on, bullet point under job number 2 on the resume. So that can trigger your memory to be able to answer those questions, right?
Yeah.
More thoughtfully.
And that's exactly right. And when I try to talk to some of the younger at my job, some of the younger people going for interviews and things like that. Now, I'm not a professional, but, I'm a conversationalist.
Absolutely.
Professional conversational.
Well, I try to be. But I try to emphasize for them that it's very important to be able to speak to some of the things that might not necessarily be documented on the resume.
Exactly.
Some of those skills that you talk about, some of those intangibles and that experience that came through the job that may not be, but you can still build off of a bullet point, but it may not necessarily be on the resume as a bullet point.
Because when you're interviewing, you don't want to regurgitate what's on the resume.
Right.
Same thing with the cover
Exactly.
letter, because they were
Right.
like, I can read.
Right.
This is all part of like the art of presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, and I think on a personal note for me, I always felt uncomfortable about the interview process, and I always felt like the company had the power, and I was, like, please give me the job. I think having a resume that was concise and clear and clean, and it gave me the confidence to know, like, nah, I'm the shit. Like,
right. That's me. You need me.
You need me.
You need me.
You
Absolutely.
and I screenshot when I got the resume back from her, and I printed them out, and I was like, dang, this is
real deal.
cool. So I screenshot and sent it to my coworkers, and everybody was like,
yo,
yeah. And that amped me up even more. I was like, Bombay. Ready. War ready. But it gives you that power. I turned down a bunch of jobs that I went out to in just knowing my worth. Like me being able to see it. And them, man, it's crazy in the job market because people get creative with what they put in their resumes, but corporations are real creative with those job descriptions, and then you go in and you like, hold up, player, because you said this was marketing. Right. This girl outside asking for donations. This is not the same thing.
Marketing.
Right? So it definitely gave me the confidence to be able to say thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
And that's strong
That's
because
strong.
for so many years I felt like, oh, if they offer me this job, then I got to take it because, they offering that's probably going to be the only thing I can get. Right. But having a resume that looks good and it really showcases you, gives you the confidence to wait on the right position.
Dope. And on that note,
hey,
listen, that's the first half. Look, I got lost. I know. I got lost in the information. That's the first half. Listen, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
Quick.
And then we're going to be right back with Miss Regina James, the career specialist. She's a resume writer. She's
master resume. I'm going to just go ahead and call her a master of resumes.
When we get back, I have a question about the interview process. We will be back very shortly.